Welcome back, folks. In this video I'm going to show you how to put self-nocks in a wooden bow. Alright, so before I put string grooves, I'm going to check these tips and make sure they're the right width. I want them to be about 5/8 of an inch wide, and this one is just a little bit wider. It's about almost 3/4 of an inch, not quite. And so I'm going to refine these down just a little bit more and do some final shaping on the profile of these tips before I carve in the string grooves. Now, we cut most of the profile of this bow out a long time ago, but until this bow is completely tillered, it's not too late to keep doing a little bit of refining and edge work on this thing. If you see something that needs straightened up and you haven't tillered the bow yet, go ahead and fix that problem. I don't recommend using sandpaper too much, but sometimes if you have a block like this, you can really straighten up those edges. But you got to be careful because you can do a lot of damage even with sandpaper if you're not paying attention. That's looking pretty good. Now I'm just going to continue bringing this down where it needs to be. We're still a little bit wide. So the way I always do it is I come off the back of the bow here and I'll measure 1/4 of an inch in, which is going to be right there. I will come off the belly of the bow and I will measure in 1/2 inch. Basically, you get 2 points, and all you have to do is draw a straight line in between them, like that. And now that you have a line there, that is the guide you will follow with your file. As I carve these grooves out, following that line, I don't put the file on top of it because I want to be able to see that line. So I always set the file right there next to it where I can see my line is straight with the file. That way, if I'm going like that, I'm going to see there's an obvious problem. Likewise, if I'm going the other way. One thing you want to watch for is wiggling. So if you wiggle sideways and start sawing like that, you're going to saw off these corners and you're going to make this groove wider and wider every time you do that. So try to make sure you're going straight in, straight out like that. Okay, so I've made that groove. Oh, let's see here. I've made it about 3/16 of an inch deep. One of the ways I check to see if that groove is where it needs to be is to actually take a string and fit it on there. And if it sits all the way down in it, it's usually pretty good. And that does. That sits really good in that groove. So what that means is it's time to flip it and do the other side. And you can see actually, I've still got a little bit of glue on the tip of this from when this was a sealed stave. It's on there pretty good. So getting that side's pretty easy. Now the difficult part is getting the second side to match. I'm going to start the one. Come in 1/4 inch and it's going to be right there. And then on the belly side, I'm going to come down 1/2 inch, which is going to be right there. And then connect those lines. I had a little too much coffee this morning, pretty shaky, but I have too much coffee every morning. And so you can kind of come straight across from that groove like that. And then pivot. And that looks about right. So before you get too deep, make sure it's kind of looking how you want it to. So far it's looking pretty good. I think I might be a little further up than I need to be, but for what we're doing here, this will work just fine. Just remember, being careful with this part is more about how good you want it to look than the functionality of it. If you get some grooves in that are pretty close together on each side, you're going to be just fine. When you get the grooves in, go ahead and grab your string again and just check the fit. That's looking pretty good. Smooth out these bottom edges here where your string's going to rub. You don't want any sharp edges on there. One thing that's important to note is that we're not cutting the back of the bow. If you don't have really good shoulders here, the string tends to want to slip off when you're tillering a bow with a long string. And so it's tempting for some people to just put a groove across the back, and that holds it a lot better. But it's really not a good idea, because if you do that, you're violating that growth ring all the way across the back of the bow. And you can still see the growth rings here on the end. It was a while ago that we got this stave looking like a bow. We chased a ring, but it's still important that we don't violate that ring. And so if you cut your groove all the way across the tip there, you're going to violate that growth ring. And what could happen is, when you're drawing your bow at some point, it could fail right here where my fingertip is, and that thing will basically just peel straight up and you could lose the limb. So by just cutting the grooves into the side of the stave, you're leaving this growth ring intact, so the bulk of the force that your string is putting on the stave is going to be put on that intact growth ring right there. That being said, I am still going to smooth this up, but I'm not going to use a file. I'm going to use some sandpaper. So you want to use something that's not very aggressive, and I've got this tattered up 220 grit sandpaper. I'm just going to fold it where I can find a good spot like that, and then I'm going to just kind of gently rub it on that and just take off the hard edges. Now we're going to do the same thing to the other end of the bow. Alright, so I got both sides cut in, both ends of this bow. They look really good. I'm going to leave them square for now, and really what you do with the part above the string is up to you. A lot of people like to carve designs and different things into there. Here are some ideas though that you can do. You can just kind of point them off a little bit like that. If you got one that you're going to use a lot for hunting, if you're rough on your bows like me and you dig them into the dirt, you can leave a rounded end like that. If you're wanting to do a bow with narrow tips, you need to consider doing tip overlays. And that is because on a narrow tip, you don't have enough room to put side knocks on. If you grooved into both sides of this, there wouldn't be anything left for the string to hang on to. So that's a situation where you're going to want to do something like this. That's going to do it for this video. I've got the string knocks cut in on both ends of this stave. I've got the long string attached, and I'm finally ready to start making a bow out of the stave. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Hey buddy, heel. Heel. Good boy.